Did your golden child sibling's life turn out poorly despite being the GC? My older GC sibling was never abused and was always showered with unconditional love and support. There was no pressure on him to be perfect or perform well. Anything he did was automatically praised and celebrated, even with minimal effort. Now, he leads a sad, empty life as a middle-aged man who struggles with alcoholism and drug abuse. He has never had a real career or a successful relationship. His substance abuse has caused his hair to fall out and has severely affected his appearance, making him look decrepit. I suspect he might either die from an overdose or end up in prison due to his actions under the influence. I'm estranged from him and don't feel bad for him, since he never showed empathy for me or helped me against our narcissistic parent. But I wonder how he ended up so troubled despite having all the advantages, love, and support in our household. Has anyone else experienced something similar? Why does this happen? Comment 1. My GC sister is married to a man over 20 years her senior. They met when she was 21, and they have one child together. She used to be a social butterfly, always surrounded by friends and constantly on the go. Now, she's a stay-at-home mom with no friends, no car, and no job. She doesn't even know what medications she's on. In every picture I see of her, no matter how big her smile is, she looks sad. It breaks my heart to see her so unhappy. We were fortunate not to be pitted against each other. I wasn't worth my narcissistic mother's attention in that way. But it still hurts to see my once vibrant sister reduced to a shadow of her former self. Her house is in disrepair, though they are trying to fix it, which is draining their finances. Her husband travels for work, and she's left at home, managing his career and supporting him. I haven't met her husband, but from what I can tell, he seems to be a narcissist as well. He has 5 children from previous relationships, none of whom talk to him. My sister has her own issues, but I never wanted this kind of life for her. She's living her worst nightmare, claiming to love a life she once swore she would never be happy in. I've tried to let her know she can escape if she wants to, but she's so enmeshed in the situation that she can't see the control he has over her. Edit. As to why this happens, it's because they were never prepared for the real world. They grow up with things handed to them on a silver platter, lacking work ethic, people skills, and facing empty promises about their exceptionalism, without anything to back it up. Comment 2. My GC brother was always given everything, while I was never considered good enough. Now, in our 40s, he still lives in my parents' basement, remains the golden child, and isn't working. Meanwhile, I'm making 6 figures and still feel inadequate. I've given up on trying to impress my mom. Comment 3. My GC sister married a narcissist, just like our parents. She has stagnated professionally and spends a lot of time curating her image to hide this from others. Her husband and she were so difficult that they managed to alienate both his brother and me, her only sibling, leaving them with no close family. He took their child to another country for a visit, and while there, he rented a place to live and got a job, effectively relocating them without discussing it with her first. This left my sister to pack up their belongings and move everything to another country all by herself. She was incredibly upset, but instead of asking for help or addressing the situation constructively, she decided to inform me that she had taken my portion of our inheritance and then attempted to bully my husband and our 8-year-old child. Consequently, I asked her to leave, and she was left in this situation with no support. Essentially, she sabotaged herself by being a narcissist and marrying another narcissist. Fortunately, most golden children don't turn out to be narcissists. Many have experienced abuse, though of a different and less obvious kind than we scapegoats. And yes, a lot of people raised this way do struggle. Most of the GCs I've known in real life have faced significant issues, such as imposter syndrome. My sister is no exception. Comment 4. This happened to my GC sister. I was certain she would be highly successful, marry into wealth, have children, and so on. Instead, she ended up in several long-term relationships with mean, controlling men, started drinking and using drugs, and completely fell apart. Now she's married to a nice guy whom she hates and treats cruelly. She's become bitter. Her looks have deteriorated prematurely. She was very beautiful, still is, but now looks worn, and she's working low-paying bartending jobs. Worst of all, she moved to the town where our mom lives and is once again under her influence. I actually feel awful for her. Comment 5. I was the golden child. What happened was that my parents destroyed my sense of self, so I only had their dreams and goals in mind. They then failed to provide the proper support for me to achieve those dreams, which led me to spiral into self-deprecating depression because I had failed miserably at what I was raised to believe was true success. If I had accomplished what I thought would make my parents proud, I'd probably be an alcoholic, feeling empty inside with no sense of identity. Achieving someone else's goals is almost the opposite of fulfilling. The love and support were all fake, and when we discover that, usually at a very critical juncture in our lives, we shatter like glass. Comment 6. It's hard to determine who was the scapegoat and who was the golden child among my siblings and me. My brothers would argue that I was the golden child because my dad was nicer to me than to them growing up. However, while I didn't suffer as much physical abuse, I endured significant verbal, mental, and emotional abuse. My mother also shielded my brothers from my father, whereas I, being less likely to be physically harmed, was often left to suffer the consequences. I would argue that my middle brother was my mom's golden child, and my oldest brother was my father's golden child, simply for being the eldest son. However, I do recognize that they were also subjected to their own forms of abuse. Growing up, my trauma and abuse were often dismissed because my brothers had it worse than I did. I was also made into their scapegoat by my parents, who believed my father was nicer to me. This led me to bear the brunt of everyone's abuse. My mother was particularly cruel to me in ways she wasn't to my brothers. I was expected to be independent and self-sufficient from a very young age, as early as kindergarten and first grade. In the end, I think we all suffered. I don't harbor ill will towards them, but I also know I don't want them in my life. My oldest brother, as of last year, has a fiancée and 2 children. My other brother has a son, but that's a whole other set of issues. I moved out last year after meeting my boyfriend online, relocating to a new state. I am child-free and plan to remain so until I pass away. I don't see the rifts in my family being bridgeable. I believe I was unfairly blamed for many things beyond my control and that my parents pitted us against each other. My brothers probably see me as a spoiled, rotten person who always gets her way. I believe we were all children who didn't deserve the treatment we received. I think my parents should never have had children, married each other, or stayed married. They failed us in many ways, leading to where we are now. I recognize that my brothers have become flying monkeys for our mother, who is seen as their martyr. I hope my brothers find peace. I don't wish to have them in my life. I hope to find peace and contentment for myself someday. I respect that they do not consider me family and likely never have. I now need to focus on mending and repairing myself. Comment 7. Sure did. I was the disliked oldest daughter to my narcissistic mother. The golden child was my middle brother, whom my mother was convinced would become a professional baseball player and support her in her old age. He was a mama's boy for 3 decades. Now he's over $150,000 in debt, had a run-in with the law over some illegal Airbnbs, is hooked on kratom, and lives about as far away from mom as possible. He's in Oregon. She's in SWFL. Now, she doesn't even interact with him. Unfortunately for her, my husband and I are the most successful of all the children, financially stable with the ability to travel and such. It has frustrated her to the point where she's raged. I'd put her in a nursing home before I ever built her a home behind mine. And honestly, I believe her. Comment 8. I can relate. My cousin, who is the same age as I am, was academically exceptional from 4th to 6th grade. He won gold medals in many Olympiads and earned numerous awards. He was an all-rounder. At that time, I wasn't a bad student myself. I got A's in subjects that really mattered and was pretty good in sports, especially martial arts, where I earned several awards. Although I occasionally made mistakes, I was definitely an above-average kid, but my cousin was far better than me. My aunt decided to post a picture of my cousin with all his medals and awards as her WhatsApp profile picture, which made my mom quite jealous. She showed me the picture and started comparing him to me, which hurt a lot. Today, my cousin is studying at a lower-tier university and is a self-proclaimed junkie with some issues. Meanwhile, I've earned a full scholarship to study abroad. I love my cousin, and we're still close. Comment 9. My GC sibling still experienced some of the narcissistic abuse, but nothing compared to what my middle sibling and I endured. She's just like our mother, a clone. She believes she's in a position to run her mouth and be abusive just like our mother. Despite hating our mother, she keeps her close. My mom will bail her out of anything. Since I'm no contact with her, I can't speak to her current situation, but she's a real fool with a lot of growing up to do. Comment 10. This post reminds me a lot of my own GC brother. My narcissistic father thought he was the second coming when we were growing up. My brother won a baseball championship at a young age, and the team he helped coach got their 15 minutes of fame. He was also funny, had a lot of friends, and our father loved it. Our father always told my brother to just have fun, in the context of, you're only a kid once. My brother didn't put effort into school, never had an after-school or summer job, and if my mom gave him chores around the house, our father would often do them for him. I was more shy and bookish, so I didn't provide the same bragging rights and became the scapegoat. My brother would find ways to torment me growing up, putting me down, etc. It was written off as sibling rivalry, even though I was almost 10 years younger, and it was hardly a fair fight. My brother was never punished. He could do whatever he wanted, lock me in a dark bathroom, throw pickle juice in my eyes, insult me constantly. You name it. All our father wanted was for him to remain his charming, popular self. When my brother entered adulthood, he had poor grades, no honed skills or talents, and no desire to attend trade school or college. He continued to have fun into his 20s, not working while our father supported him. My brother expected everyone to bask in his glory well into adulthood and to be taken care of, as he always had been. Now at 50, he still lives with our father, has no reputable skills or prospects, and probably never expected to need to take care of himself. He goes from one low-wage job to another. His funny party guy persona fell flat as he got older. No one is impressed with him anymore, and his friends have moved on. Because he never faced any consequences, he has been fired from multiple jobs and has gotten into trouble with the law, including serious charges for violence against girlfriends. I always associated this with him, never being told he couldn't mistreat me, a female sibling, growing up. He also has drug and alcohol issues, likely as a form of self-medication. He is a mess. My father tolerates him and doesn't kick him out, but he is no longer the golden child. There's nothing to be proud of anymore. My father, being a narcissist, cannot see his role in how my brother turned out. He once said to me, "I guess how you're raised has no bearing on how you turn out." No, I'm not making that up. He said it and meant it. They are stuck with each other now. I have no idea what will happen to my brother when our father dies. All I know is that I'm not taking him in. As for me, I'm doing fine. I kept my grades up, learned responsibility from chores at home and summer jobs, earned a master's degree, and make good money. I have my own house and am low contact with both my father and brother. Once our elderly grandparents are deceased, I plan to go no contact. Although I have lower self-esteem due to my upbringing, I realize now that despite envying my brother as a child for being the golden child, he was severely set up to fail in the real world. He never learned that the world doesn't owe you anything and that you need to work for what you have. I believe this is the curse of the golden child. Comment 11? Similar story? Kind of. I'm in a unique position in this sub because I was the golden child. It's strange because I've never been able to stand my mom. I led the charge in going no contact because I was just fed up with her behavior. The cool part is, I don't have a GC sibling to guilt me because I'm the GC. Some of my siblings are in contact with her, while others are not. However, the ones who do keep in touch aren't flying monkeys. They talk to her because they feel overwhelmed with guilt and completely understand why I'm no contact, supporting my decision. Back on topic, I was similar to your sibling in my 20s. Substance abuse, lack of motivation, dropping out of college, working minimum wage jobs, and being in a terrible marriage. My life didn't come together until my 30s, after a sudden shift in motivation following my divorce. I didn't realize my mom was a narcissist until a couple of years ago, and went no contact about 6 months later. My therapist diagnosed her, as she, of course, refuses to go to therapy because she believes she's perfect. Once I understood that and started reading up on narcissism, dealing with her and deciding to go NC became easier. I'm fortunate that my 4 siblings and I are on the same page and have found some level of success. I only hear complaints from extended family, and even they are either starting to understand or have given up on guilting me since I've become immune to it. I forgot what my point was, so sorry for the rant. Comment 12. No idea. I went no contact a year ago. Apparently, my sister has 3 kids from 2 different fathers and lives on child support. But I'm seen as the enemy because I don't believe in their God. I'm not slut-shaming anyone, but my parents were heavily into religious beliefs that emphasize not having sex before marriage. I'm mildly successful in a career I love and have 3 children with the same man. You'd think they'd appreciate that, but no. I set boundaries, and suddenly my sister is the best in the world. It's amazing how hypocritical narcissistic parents can be. Also, you'd think they would look down on my sister for having 2 children from different fathers, but no, I'm the devil because I stand up to them. My whole family are narcissists. I'm glad I separated myself from them. Hail Odin. Comment 13. OP asked for examples of golden child abuse, and I tried to post this but couldn't, so I'll share it here. I know you weren't addressing me specifically, but for me, an example is learning at a young age that the praise was empty. My mother was always overly proud of every little thing I did, but I saw right through it. She would be so proud of me for going to school or having a job, even if it was a crappy one. Lots of people work or go to school. There's no need to act like I cured cancer. So when I actually accomplish something I'm proud of, I get the same response as when I tie my shoe. Constant praise isn't much better than constant criticism, but most people with normal parents wouldn't understand that. So my feelings often feel invalid. My sister was the golden child. Our narcissistic mother did everything for her because she looks exactly like her. She bought her cars, helped pay for college, covered her rent, and even paid to move her down to Florida with her and my stepfather. There were so many things she did for my sister that she never did for me. Now my sister is 42. While she is financially successful and, God help us, a therapist, she is all alone. She lives in a minimalist apartment because she can't handle clutter, so it has no decorations or personal touches. She doesn't cook and doesn't even know how to make pasta. She works and then goes home. She has no friends, no boyfriend, and has never been married or, to my knowledge, been in a serious long-term relationship. She has no children. Her biggest outing is doing her laundry at my aunt's house on Sundays. She has a lot of money because she's extremely frugal and never buys anything. It's an absolutely joyless existence. I find it hard to feel sorry for her because she hates me and blames me for ruining her childhood. I was mean to her, I admit it, but that was because I was parentified, abused, and treated like an unwanted dog. She has always sided with our mother, but now she regrets it because our mother has gotten much worse and gets on her nerves constantly. Meanwhile, I'm in Virginia, far away, living my life with my husband and pets, feeling happy and loved. Comment 15. The typical trajectory for a golden child is to first appear to have everything and get whatever they wish during childhood. This continues through their college years and into their early adult working life, where the cracks typically begin to show. These cracks often appear because, at this stage, they are forced to pursue their goals under a set of rules other than those established by their narcissistic parent. As others have mentioned, the narcissist usually grooms the GC to provide them with maximum supply, initially through adulation, then agreement, and finally through accomplishments that reflect well on the narcissist. Simply put, there is no career for that in the real world, unless the narcissistic parent owns a large company that they pass down. As the GC hits real life, things often start to fall apart. The narcissistic parent may continue to provide emotional and financial support until they can no longer do so, or until they pass away. Meanwhile, The GC continues to struggle because they were never taught how to adapt to the world around them. The scapegoat, on the other hand, was typically forced out and had to fend for themselves, emotionally, financially, or otherwise, thus learning to adapt through necessity. In my case, my elder narcissistic sister was pitted against me, the youngest, the scapegoat, throughout our childhood, and by our teenage years, we were fully at war with each other. She continued to accumulate apparent successes into her 20s, including attending an Ivy League university, with parental help, marriage, paid for by parents, and multiple marriages. But now, in her 60s, she has endured decades of multiple divorces, struggled to hold a job, and has never been able to fully support herself without assistance from either or both of our narcissistic parents. Today, she lives under the roof of our elderly mother, who is on a fixed income, all so that our mother, who along with my, now deceased, father created this mess, can continue to receive narcissistic supply until she dies. Meanwhile, I faced harsh realities in my 20s and forced myself to create a plan for the rest of my life, including going back to grad school. I have earned multiple advanced degrees, found success in my field, maintained a long, stable marriage, and finally went no contact with the entire family about 7 years ago. My life is quiet and happy. My only regret is that at age 62, I can look back and see the entire story unfold, who did what, and the resulting damage. At this point, I simply don't have the energy to deal with them. Any doubt I had was erased last summer with the death of my non-narcissistic brother, news that reached me a month and a half later, with my narcissistic mother showing no interest in discussing it. This situation confirmed what I had always known. So I'm done. Life has drained me. My advice to young people: don't wait. Going no contact is a positive step, and rebuilding your life with people who love you for who you are is a wonderful thing. Life is too short to let the negativity of narcissists destroy your happiness. I'll be brutally honest. Most golden children, GC, are actually not receiving the advantages, love, and support that it seems they're getting. They were pitted against us so they could be manipulated into believing their treatment was better when it absolutely was not. Sometimes I'm unsure who the GC actually was in our family. It makes me think that there truly wasn't a clear GC, but my sister did have moments when she could do no wrong, only to face strong ridicule when she began to assert her own identity. Up until she declared that she didn't believe in God, I think she could have gotten away with anything. However, even the GC can upset and disappoint narcissistic parents and end up receiving the same treatment. ETA, my sister married a narcissistic husband and has his child. I'm seeing signs of possible narcissistic behavior in her as well, which is unfortunate. Her husband financially abuses her, and she's a stay-at-home mom. Now he's moving her out of state, where she will have no local emotional support. She has the option to refuse and divorce him, but she doesn't want to, because she believes her only alternative is to move back in with our narcissistic parents. Nope. My GC sister's life turned out fabulous, while the rest of us ended up with lives that kind of suck. The 3 other siblings endured verbal and physical abuse, while the GC got away with everything. Out of us 3, 1 has died from a heroin overdose. Another was fortunate enough to marry a wealthy man, but has been in therapy for 40 years. And as for me, I work, have a husband, and am somewhat happy, but I constantly wonder how my life might have turned out if I had a different childhood, specifically, a different mother. The GC has sailed through life ever since she was a precious, golden-curled, blue-eyed toddler. My older sister and I were treated like trolls who needed to be shoved back under a bridge, and the anger and shame have never gone away. My brother was the golden child, and still is, despite my siblings and I all being no contact. He got into a vehicular accident in December and broke his neck while under the influence. He was in another country at the time, and my sister and I rushed to his aid, only to discover that he has been abusing alcohol. He works for our government and may lose his position. He isn't yet 30, and he might have already ruined his life. I think that because he was handed many things in life, never had to care for himself, and got away with anything he wanted, he doesn't see himself as having to face consequences. I would guess this is likely a common theme. Comment 19. I guess I was the golden child in my family, and my life still turned out badly. Despite receiving better treatment due to my talents in sports, the home environment was still horrible, loveless, lacking emotional support or guidance, with arguments and shouting between my parents every night. It was a very traumatic environment. I'm beginning to think that the love shown was not genuine. It was merely praise that was conditional on my success. I believe my scapegoat sibling was treated poorly enough that it motivated him to leave early and maintain a form of no contact from a young age, whereas I stuck around, which turned out to be a mistake. Comment 20. Absolutely. Each one of them turned out or is turning out badly. My younger sister is an anxious mess, trying her best while dealing with guilt for things that were never her fault. She's also had to rebuild her self-esteem from the ground up because of our narcissistic mother. My younger brother is slowly beginning to understand that his life has value outside of what he can provide for others. It's a sentiment that resonates deeply, but still breaks my heart because he is truly a wonderful person. And my youngest brother is likely to face a nightmare once he leaves the clutches of our narcissistic mother, as he has never experienced accountability for his actions or words. While I love my youngest brother, I hate what being around our mother has done to him. I wonder if until they walk away, they can never really be their own person. Their golden child status was and is 100% a role imposed by our narcissistic mother and was always about her, never about them. Just like everything else our mother has done, and like the train wreck of a person she is, the devastating effects of her actions will never be acknowledged by her. To her, nothing exists outside of herself or what serves her. To narcissistic parents, children are merely accessories, extensions of themselves, or means to an end. If you don't follow their invisible rules or meet their ever-changing expectations, you become the embodiment of everything wrong in their world. This, to me, is what makes narcissistic parents monstrous. Their ability to take an individual who never consented to being used and turn them into a tool for self-gratification. I won't lie and pretend I never felt anger and resentment as a child because I was the longest-serving black sheep. I absolutely did. I'll admit that as a confused and hurting child, my feelings were misplaced. Now, as an adult who has gone from low contact to no contact with the narcissistic parent, I've had the distance and time to begin healing. I like to think I can now see the situation for what it was. The golden child doesn't get a say in the role they are given any more than those of us who served as the black sheep did. Knowing this as an adult doesn't erase the pain, but it has been personally helpful. Remembering that none of us had any say in the matter has been helpful in my healing journey. It was never just me. It was never even about me. I was just there. For context, the light bulb finally clicked that the golden child was always the youngest of a pair. My narcissistic mother had 6 children in total. I was her first and the oldest daughter, so I was blamed for ending her life or stealing her freedom, or whatever excuse she used for treating me the way she did. Her next child, my sister, became her golden child. Later, when my brother was born, the cycle continued. To be honest, as adults, I wouldn't have blamed my sister if she had decided to go no contact with me. However, I also recognize that this feeling comes from a place of selfishness and guilt, along with my own desires for punishment and forgiveness. In reality, she is her own person with her own life and problems, and it is not her responsibility to alleviate my guilt. Nor is it fair to minimize the damage I've caused because I was also hurting. She went through a hell very different from mine, but a very real hell nonetheless. TLDR, sibling dynamics are complicated. You can choose to have siblings, or choose that you do not have siblings if having them in your life hinders your healing. Your family is who you choose, and don't feel obligated to keep someone who treats you poorly just because you are related. You did not get a say in being born, but you absolutely have a say in who has the privilege of knowing you while you are here. Personally, I have been both the person who wished my siblings would understand my pain at my lowest points, and the person who wished for the love and attention I thought they had. If you find that the golden child has become a carbon copy of your narcissistic parents, You absolutely have the right to walk away and not look back. If you were the golden child and have found that your siblings who were the black sheep have become a carbon copy of your narcissistic parents, you absolutely have the right to walk away and never look back. If someone in your life treats you poorly, you have every right to drop them like the steaming pile of crap they are. Suffering on their part doesn't demand forgiveness on yours. If that makes sense. I don't know you or your situation, and I don't judge you or the choices you made. Living is difficult enough as it is, so I wish you well and the strength to do what you need to do for yourself. My GC brother is an evil narcissistic psychopath, yet my enabling father is devoted to him and defends him no matter what. This golden child is a bitter, divorced, jobless loser who hasn't accomplished anything in his miserable life. He is almost 60 and doesn't even own a house. He has been unemployed for 30 years, lives with a girlfriend, and has never paid rent in his life. In contrast, I have succeeded in my profession and have bought 7 properties over the years. My sister is also successful and has a nice farm with horses, cows, and other animals. This GC has envied his siblings for as long as I can remember and has spent the last 20 years destroying the family with lies and turning us against each other. He stole the inheritance meant for us 3 scapegoat siblings after our mother died. So, essentially, he is a loser who has succeeded only as a master manipulator, family destroyer, and inheritance thief. We are hoping for karma to catch up with him soon. Comment 22. My middle brother was the golden child and also a narcissist. There were countless incidents growing up, including physical ones. My father was a type 2 diabetic, and my brother inherited a tendency for this condition. He was diagnosed in his 30s, and by his late 40s, he had a triple bypass. He married and had 1 child, but after his divorce, he did everything possible to ensure that his ex-wife and child received nothing. He faced trouble with the state multiple times for failing to pay child support, even to the extent that the state threatened to revoke his driver's license. His health deteriorated further, and he ended up on dialysis. I did my best to avoid interacting with him, but I was dragged into his hospital room near the end when I took my mom to see him. End-stage type 2 diabetes can be quite gruesome, and I will spare you the details. He died 2 months before my mother. I was roped into helping clear out his storage units and was shocked by the amount of stuff he had stored away, despite claiming he couldn't afford child support. He assured his daughter and all his friends that she would be well provided for and that her college expenses were covered. However, we found evidence of only 1 account with maybe $1,000 in it. Apart from that, there was nothing. He bought everything for himself and left his daughter in poverty because he didn't get custody. He had my mother convinced that the system was rigged against him and that his ex-wife was evil, even though the courts did not grant him custody. This is not what I would consider turning out well, but my mother defended him until the bitter end, even yelling at the medical examiner who called to notify her of his death, insisting that he never received good medical care. Comment 23. My brother was the golden child, while I, the scapegoat, went no contact with the family. My brother always defended my narcissistic mother, and she ended up living with him. He has never had friendships or romantic relationships. She constantly made him feel guilty for not giving her all his attention and manipulated him into taking care of her. He resented me for leaving and creating my own life. Right before she died, he finally acknowledged that she had ruined his life, and he voiced this to her. Now, at 52, he has no friends, no relationships, and no life of his own. He blames her, but he needs to recognize his own role in the situation. I tried to rekindle our relationship, but he's not interested in trying. Despite my own problems, I've built a fulfilling life with friends who love me, great hobbies, and a strong relationship. It took a lot of hard work to get here. Comment 24. I love my GC sister and don't wish any ill on her, but she was treated differently and allowed to be a child in ways my brother and I weren't. My parents provided her with basic care and love that we missed out on. For instance, I needed braces but never got them, while she did. They paid for her extracurricular activities, whereas I had to fundraise for mine. And my mom spent quality time with her without projecting issues onto her. It's honestly heartbreaking because, no, she doesn't have many issues. She forms healthy relationships, maintains friendships, and enjoys her alone time. She has healthy self-esteem, sets boundaries, and makes smart life decisions. She self-regulates fairly well. I'm rooting for her and I'm happy she has all these things, but it feels like seeing a life I might have had. These things come so easily for her, while I have to work incredibly hard and face numerous setbacks. I struggle with understanding healthy boundaries and relationships, which seem to come naturally to her. It's astonishing how much parenting can impact a person's life. Comment 25. Yeah, I have a similar story. My younger sister was the GC, and although the neglect was equally severe, she received all kinds of support for sports, activities, and a social life that I never did. She has a high school diploma and dropped out of college. She lived off me and her friends for a while before moving back home a couple of years ago. At least I was able to gain some independence thanks to the degree I managed to earn. Despite my narcissistic parents doing everything they could to sabotage my education. I went NC with my sister before going NC with them. By that point, she was the worst of both parents combined, and I doubt she's improved. Comment 26. I wouldn't say it's awful, but my GC brother's life hasn't been great since he became an adult. He's struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, depression, and suicidal thoughts. He was recently broken up with and really hates his job. He also comes across as kind of an asshole all around and is very immature. He really doesn't know how to take care of himself at all. In a way, I do feel bad for him because I realize he was neglected as well by our mom. She constantly praised him and did everything for him, giving him an inflated sense of ego and an entitlement mentality. After college, I think he faced a hard reality when he realized that life isn't easy and not everyone is going to worship him like our mom did. Instead, he had to work hard to be successful, and it wasn't just handed to him. I think he turned to drugs and alcohol to cope with that. However, he was a major asshole to me for most of my life. Almost daily after school, he and his friends would bully me at home. He would make up horrible lies about me to our parents, who never believed me, leading to me getting into a lot of trouble. He also physically attacked me on multiple occasions. So really, I don't feel too bad. As they say, karma is a bitch. Meanwhile, I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. I'm happily married with a baby on the way, and am a medical student, which has been my lifelong goal. I wouldn't wish the abuse my mom inflicted upon me on anyone, but I do think it gave me a grit that has allowed me to be successful. I am extremely independent because no one else took care of me for as long as I can remember, whereas my brother was, and still is, constantly babied and never developed any true sense of self, I think. Comment 27. My GC brothers married people who are controlling and mentally ill, like our mother. One of my GC brothers went NC with me because his wife told him to. My mother really helped to ruin our relationships with each other. I don't know if they inherited her traits or if it's something else. My other brother just sends a Merry Christmas text once a year. They are both extremely MAGA and religious. I'd imagine their lives are a hellscape of lies and appearances. They probably don't even know their real selves and just try to be what their wives want, or else. They did experience some abuse from our mother, so they are accustomed to bad behavior. But they were not abused and scapegoated like I was. They received faux love. I did not. Comment 28. I wouldn't say it's awful, but my GC sibling has some major social deficits. He's essentially become the embodiment of that high-strung corporate ladder person, always seeking the next rung or engaging in backstabbing and office politics to get ahead. He's finally got his own place, but despite his success with women, none of these relationships are permanent or seem particularly deep. Most women leave once his rage and inability to settle down become apparent. He's always rushing to the next thing, never able to take stock of his life. The worst part is his latest obsession with finances and stocks. He's amassing financial knowledge that is often as fickle as his other interests, and my parents, who are financially illiterate, hang on his every word. This has turned into a nightmare for me. He's convinced my family to drag me back home after I spent a year and a lot of money staying with him in his apartment. My savings have halved, and although it has stabilized, his new plan is to get my parents to sell their apartment and move into a retirement village that my mother is already complaining they'll hate before they even get there. He's also said he'd take me in for any price, but if I move back in with him or anywhere else during this ridiculous housing crisis, I'm going to lose the remaining money I have. It's just so frustrating, and yet my parents hang on his every word while dismissing anything I say. I've been undermined and sabotaged for a long time and have never had real freedom or independence, so nothing changes, I suppose. I tried explaining some issues to him, like when my mother stole my house keys. His initial reaction was laughter. Now he somewhat understands that the situation between our parents and me is bad, and while he is sympathetic when I visit, that sympathy is forgotten when he talks to our parents. He pretends nothing happened and doesn't really care about my situation when advising our parents. Any financially literate person would see that the only way I can save money is by staying at home with my parents, rather than losing money renting or staying in his apartment. His financial acumen seems lost on him, and he's pressuring them to sell their home, which will put me in dire straits. It's selfish and uncaring, and there's no other way to describe it. Now, he acts like dealing with our parents is so stressful, but only after seeing firsthand that what I've said is literally the truth, and my parents talk about me as if I'm not in the room. He's oblivious and lacks self-awareness. Comment 29. The GC is a 20-something who just sits around in my mom's house with no job, no car, and barely any responsibilities. They do absolutely nothing all day. I'm pretty much low contact because whenever my brother and I try to discuss anything, they claim everyone has abused them, yet they also don't remember their childhood. I'm exhausted and frustrated that they've been given so much help and care, taken advantage of it, and then discarded it because they don't care. They're a disappointment. Comment 30. Nope, the GC is doing very well in life. He's happy, healthy, and successful by every definition. He always saw through our parents' games and decided early on that he had too much going for him to let their nonsense get in the way. He is such a role model to me. Our parents discarded him once they realized he wouldn't let them claim credit for his success. The substitute GC is following in their footsteps, while the SG is flailing and failing endlessly. Both still constantly seek validation and acceptance. I'm the lost child. I might as well have been discarded at birth. I crave their validation and connection, but I know better than to starve myself by feeding on poison. I'm doing okay, neither great nor terrible. Comment 31. I don't know. My GC sister continues to project a very happy image. She just had her third baby and seems over the moon. However, I can't understand how she can be so happy given that her husband is verbally abusive and a bully to her and her kids and to me. I've heard him call his son a little prick for not making eye contact and tell my sister to shove her daughter back up her womb because she was coddling her. According to my sister, both my mom and I are horrible for speaking out against him, which made her cry. As a result, we've become the scapegoats in this multi-generational narcissistic family. I'm at peace with not talking to her and her family, and her happiness is her business now. I just wish those kids weren't in that situation. Comment 32. My GC brother is 41 and has severely damaged his body through serial steroid abuse. He has serious body dysmorphia and believes he's tiny despite being extremely muscular. Until he was 35, he didn't have a job, had no money in his account, and owed $20,000 to various people, which my dad had to cover. He's been married for 10 years, but is always on the verge of divorce, and they have no kids. Comment 33. My GC sibling is an alcoholic, a mean drunk to his wife, and a serial cheater. His wife kicked him out a while back, and my mom was essentially groveling, begging him to come live with her so she could have her cherished son all to herself. My dad cheated on my mom, and it was all I heard about for 25 years. Despite that, she overlooked it, thinking her handsome baby boy would give her all the attention she desired. However, He always avoided her and blew her off. Comment 34. My brother's life is a mess, and I feel like he may be sabotaging himself so that my mom will continue to rescue him, keeping him close and ensuring that he never strays too far from her. She likes to sabotage us to make sure we always need her and never leave. This has led me to reject her help as meddlesome, overbearing, derailing, and invasive. Yet, he loves it and soaks it up. He even puts his baby mother, with whom he is in a toxic relationship, in difficult situations just to stay close to my mother. She has become the scapegoat since I left, with my mom and brother now turning against her together. I can't think of many other reasons why he isn't more resourceful, despite having so many tools at his disposal. I believe she has made him fear success. Meanwhile, much of my success can be attributed to my desire for independence, so that I'm never at their mercy. He often tries to adopt the same hero complex my mother has towards me, though he has nothing to offer given that I am more successful. As a result, he creates far-fetched suspicions that I need rescuing and comes knocking on my door or sends other family members to check on me. This is the only way he can offer help, even though I don't need it. He also gaslights me about my mother's behavior and acts as a flying monkey, all to maintain the family structure that benefits him emotionally. He wants to keep me in the same position because rescuing my mom from our conflicts and ganging up against me strengthens their bond and keeps them close. It makes him feel secure in his position and prevents him from becoming the scapegoat himself. He doesn't want to grow up. He'd rather remain mama's little baby boy. I recently went NC with both of them, and he threw a tantrum, saying, "She's my sister." I won't allow this, as if he has any say in the matter. He called me a piece of shit, as if my boundaries are worse than their lifelong bullying. They relentlessly tried to contact me and seek explanations, but it was just a trap to gaslight me again. This only reinforced my decision to block them all even harder. Comment 35. This sounds a lot like my experience. My younger sister was the GC. My parents took her to therapy, sports, and school events, and drove her to and from work while I was left to my own devices all the time. She's now 26, has a 5-year-old child, is homeless and on drugs. My parents have custody of my nephew, hasn't had a real job in about 6 years, crashes on people's couches, and overdosed in November, almost dying. Comment 36. To be honest, boys are often treated better than girls in South Asian cultures. I've been doing chores around the house since I was about 10, was on the honor roll, and volunteered in school. Although I live at home and work part-time while on SSI for autism, I still handle various household tasks, including washing the dishes, doing laundry, taking out the trash, making my own bed after I wake up, vacuuming, and scrubbing the bathroom. Comment 37. My older brother was the pride of the family, so smart, funny, and full of potential. From a young age, he wanted to be an Air Force officer like our dad, specifically a jet fighter pilot, which is what our dad would have been if he weren't colorblind. He was supported, applauded, and fast-tracked in every way possible, but he never ended up joining the military. Last I heard, he married a girl he barely knew. I can't say much more because I'm NC with the whole family, but it is ironic. This happens because the GC isn't actually being given genuine support either. Their privileges come with a cost. My sibling was severely mentally ill. My dad made her his special one. She is still severely mentally ill and sends me strange messages demanding apologies from me. She could be receiving medication and even have a place to live, but she refuses help. I hope she decides to get it. Comment 39. My GC sister's life didn't turn out awful, but she didn't achieve as much as our parents expected. She became a narcissist and has never had a relationship last more than about 2 years. She has no children and holds 2 college degrees. As a young adult, it took her a long time to secure a professional job. When she finally got one, it was entry-level and in a field unrelated to her college studies. I believe our parents chose her field of study, which she was never interested in. She stayed in that entry-level job for about 40 years and always supported herself. Recently, she has become increasingly paranoid about crime and moved 1,200 miles away to escape it. We are no longer in contact, so I don't know how this move is working out for her. Comment 40, no. And I'm glad it didn't, because she's a good person. She's also a victim, though to a lesser degree. I would never want her to go through what I experienced and still deal with today. The difference is that we are almost 10 years apart. She began therapy earlier than I did and does not have a personality disorder like I do. We grew up in completely different generations. My sister was smarter than me for going low contact early on after starting therapy. As the eldest daughter and scapegoat, I have no idea why it took me so long to understand my mother. I think my trauma is too compounded and unprocessed. I will be working through it for the rest of my life. My feeling is that I am the high-maintenance child who needed the rod, while my sister was the more obedient, lower-maintenance child who got spoiled. I'm fine with it, because one of us deserves to be happy and well-adjusted. I just wish my sister would validate me sometimes, or maybe even stand up for me. But that's probably too much to expect from a younger sister. Comment 41. But that's probably too much to expect from a younger sister. I think a lot of GCs, regardless of their age, just don't care enough to intervene. Mine is 6 years older than me and watched me get beaten daily throughout our childhood. As a teenager or young adult, he was already much bigger than the end parent and could have easily stopped her, called the police, or informed the school counselor. He could have offered some kind of comfort or support, anything at all, but he simply didn't care. Comment 42. The GC in my family is a former heroin addict who has 5 kids by 4 different men and is a high school dropout. She also lost custody of 3 of her 5 children. My parents threw so much money at her when she was younger because they thought she could become a model or actress, spending thousands on modeling and acting lessons. I haven't spoken to her in over 10 years and barely communicate with my parents. I was the scapegoat and now have my own family to take care of, even though I face criticism for my extremely limited contact with my parents. Comment 43. Nah, he's actually a pretty solid guy. He has a great work ethic, is fairly accepting for his peer group, and looks out for others. He works hard and has a well-organized life. He's dependable and good-humored, truly a great friend to have. He exhibits some behaviors similar to our parents, but not as extreme or harsh. He can be a bit self-important, but I'm not sure if it's because he's capable of almost anything. If something's broken, he can fix it, and if it needs to be built, he'll build it. He's helped people out of tight spots many times. While he's not selfless, he is generous. He's not always kind, but is often fair. We don't see eye to eye politically, and I think some of his views have worsened since COVID, etc. He struggles to consider opposing views as valid and seems to believe everyone should live the same type of life. However, as a person, he's mostly good. He received the support he needed and was allowed to follow his interests, which align with what our parents would have chosen. It's not his fault that our parents adhered to strict gender roles, and he has never tried to interfere with or control how I live. While this has given him a kind of blindness toward family issues, he's not malicious and doesn't intentionally abuse others. He walks his talk. I just don't always agree with what he's saying. Edit to fix a wonky sentence. Comment 44. I wouldn't say his life turned out awful. He did everything he was supposed to do, stayed in school until he earned his PhD, and his education, which was extremely costly as an international student, was fully funded. Now he has a job that someone with less education and better social or networking skills could do. I guess my parents are accepting that. After all the money they spent on him and all the boasting to their high-status circles, he is doing something that makes him happy. However, based on certain subtle hints they drop or things they say, I get the sense they are somewhat disappointed in him. My narcissistic dad, who shamelessly showed favoritism towards my younger GC brother during my adolescence, now says things like, "You're in better financial shape than he will ever be." As the scapegoat child, only people in a sub like this would understand why that makes me happy. Comment 45. Yes, my sister's life is not how she planned it would be. But that's the problem. Children who are praised constantly develop high expectations for themselves and believe they should succeed effortlessly because they've been told how smart they are or whatever all the time. When they enter the real world and realize that not everything they want falls into their lap, they can falter. And falter my sister did. Now she's into QAnon, despite being progressive before. Everything she learned in high school seems to have gone down the drain as soon as she left home and no longer had constant praise. None of us were taught to value ourselves. We were only taught to rely on the judgment of those who raised us. This leads to depending on the approval of others in general, because our self-assessment was so thoroughly undermined as something we shouldn't have or need. When a child is raised this way, they run on praise, and when there's no more praise available where they grew up, they seek it elsewhere. She found it on the right. The right only asks that you exist on their side, and as long as someone like my sister is receiving praise for doing the bare minimum required, which is very low on the right, she'll stay wherever that praise is. It's like she found the junk food version of praise. My twin brother was the GC. To be fair, he didn't escape the difficulties. The physical challenges were a bit worse for him, mostly because he tried to fight back. He and my mother had a very volatile relationship, but since he was the only boy, he got his own room, video games, and was exempt from chores and responsibilities. He also received all the best extracurricular opportunities and a new car. His life is a mess. He lost an officer's commission in the Air Force and a scholarship to Caltech. He turned down a job at Microsoft because he thought it was beneath him. He's a self-trained software engineer. His credit is poor because he defaulted on many loans and now owes thousands in back taxes. He is broke, frustrated, and stuck in Tallahassee. He didn't even graduate high school. While I graduated with honors, no one seemed to notice. He always complains about not understanding how his life turned out this way. As young adults, my parents claimed they had to help my brother because he had such a rough childhood. I faced significant challenges and responsibilities starting at a young age. He is unhappy, and I went NC a long time ago. He resents me even more now because I have built a successful career, and my partner has a legitimate career in software engineering at a major company, placing me in a world that has never accepted him. He developed similar traits to my mother, and he's just as unhappy. All his problems seem to be someone else's fault. It's been one failed startup after another, with no savings and living paycheck to paycheck. I even offered him a business opportunity developing an app for some associates, which came with a $10 contract, and he asked me for the referral, but he never even followed up. My GC brother ruined his marriage to a wife who truly loved him. He struggled with meth addiction, suffered severe heart damage, went to jail, and went through rehab, but ended up estranged from his kids. He now lives mostly in Southeast Asia and makes a good living working freelance. When he last posted on Facebook, he was dating a series of younger women, even though he's 50. He has gained weight, and he drinks and uses substances excessively. His daughter despises him, and his son, though only 18, seems to be heading in a similar direction. He says he's happy, but from the outside, it looks like he's slowly self-destructing. Despite having everything, being the GC, socially popular, with money and great jobs, he squandered it all. I find it quite sad. He didn't choose to be the GC, and I think our parents impacted both of us significantly in their own ways. If there was ever someone who could benefit from years of therapy, it's him. Comment 48. I know it might sound petty, but my sister's life is not great, and she has never seemed truly happy. She frequently posts on social media about traveling and other activities to give the impression that she's living the life. But in reality, she has never found lasting love. Her career is in disarray because of her reputation, and she is so dependent on our mother that she struggles to thrive independently. It's both sad and somewhat embarrassing, though those who only see her through social media might be misled. Sometimes I genuinely feel sympathy for what our mother did to her. However, given that she was very abusive toward me, I can't help but think there's a hint of karmic justice in this situation. Comment 49. I'm one of three siblings, and my parents would shift the role of responsibility depending on their needs. I was the youngest. My oldest brother had to take care of my middle brother, and after a significant age gap, I was born. Right away, my middle brother was tasked with looking after me, while my oldest brother wasn't involved due to frequent mistakes. Essentially, the kind of mistakes you'd expect when a young child is put in a caregiving role. This led to my middle brother taking on the role of responsibility for a while, with me being favored. Once I outgrew the role of being the favored child, I became the one who faced the most challenges, and my middle brother took on the favored role, while my oldest brother was asked to leave at 17. During my childhood, I experienced difficulties from both my mother and brother, who teamed up against me. Now that we're all adults, my parents are showing signs of cognitive decline, and my brother is taking advantage of the situation. He's married, and his wife and children are handling everything while enduring his behavior. He's a difficult person with little self-control and has used my parents' resources to avoid consequences for various issues. My oldest brother is a good person and successful. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband has a stable career. I'm able to provide the life I always wanted for my kids, which feels like a personal achievement. However, my family views me as a failure because I don't have a job. Before staying home, I worked my way up to a high-level loan officer position and was doing well in my career. That was the only time they respected me, and once I became pregnant, their focus shifted back to my favored brother. I have two kids, and based on my experience, I can't imagine comparing them like this. It's tough. Just love your kids. Comment 50. Growing up, I always thought my favored sibling was actually the cleverest of us all. I assumed their strategy was to stay under the radar until they grew up and moved out, then do whatever they wanted. If that was their plan, I don't blame them for it. They were still subjected to some abuse and witnessed the rest of us being mistreated. My other siblings and I were too stubborn to accept the abuse without resistance, which led to more severe conflicts and consequences. So, it makes sense that my sibling chose to be the favored one to survive. But recently, as adults, my other siblings and I talked openly about the abuse for the first time. It was actually cathartic, and we spent hours discussing it. However, with my favored sibling, they kept defending our parents and insisted that it never got that bad. Now, I see this sibling as the most affected because what I thought was just an act turned out to be genuine behavior. They're in complete denial about the abuse, even when I shared my experiences. That conversation didn't last long. Out of all of us, they're the only one who makes an effort to visit our parents. The rest of us are low contact and only get involved when necessary, e.g., holidays. Even though I live in the same town as our parents, I hardly make an effort to see them, while my favored sibling lives hours away. Comment 51. The golden child, GC, does not choose to be selected. The narcissistic end parent is initially kind to all children until they start expressing their independence. Each child reacts differently to these dynamics. The GC is often the one who witnesses the end parent's negativity up close, faced with the choice to comply with the end parent or suffer like the scapegoat. To survive, the GC complies and, as a result, is damaged. The GC becomes a hostage who has not emerged unscathed. The scapegoat, on the other hand, tends to be more vocal about the family's issues, often revealing the end parent's behavior publicly. This leads to punishment and attempts to discredit the scapegoat, forcing them into compliance. The GC is unfortunately complicit in the end parent's behavior and receives rewards, not out of love, but as a tool to punish and undermine the scapegoat. Everyone in this dynamic is subjected to extreme abuse. The GC is often deeply damaged and harder to help because they have a strong, traumatic bond with the end parent. They may become highly antisocial and only function in environments similar to their family dynamics. Due to their dysfunction and fear, they struggle to stand up for themselves and may never truly experience joy, as every reward they received came with underlying threats, leaving them profoundly wounded. Comment 52, yes. My GC brother never grew up. He was infantilized, protected, and overly compensated for by our end mom. He struggled to hold down a job, ended up with a failed marriage, neglected his children, spun elaborate lies about imagined professional successes, and accumulated multiple DUIs. And Mom covered for him at every turn. After she passed away and left him most of her money, he spent it all and drank himself to death within 2 years. Comment 53. My middle sister and I alternated between being the scapegoat or the forgotten child, while our older sister was and still is the GC. We're all deeply affected. No one emerges unscathed from being raised by narcissists. Our parents never showed my middle sister or me any genuine love, while the affection given to our GC sister was insincere and entirely conditional. And she knew it. Despite appearances, we all grew up feeling unloved and unwanted. Our GC sister has a college degree and a great job, but she struggles with unhappy relationships. My middle sister is an alcoholic, moves quickly from one troubled relationship to another, and is miserable. I like to think I'm doing reasonably well. I've been in therapy since I moved out. My husband and I have been together for 20 years. And until my oldest child developed a brain tumor, I had a fulfilling job in special education. I had to leave that job temporarily to care for her. I have my own issues too. I was an alcoholic. I deal with several mental health challenges, and I have a collection of medications that help keep me functional. Despite these challenges, I am generally happy with my life. I'm the only one in our family who has attended therapy and the only one who has chosen low contact with our mother. Comment 54. I have a complex family dynamic. My sister is the GC because she is my mom's favorite, and whatever she says goes. Meanwhile, my dad favors me, but is almost never present at home. Both my sister and I experienced neglect. She spent much of her childhood ensuring my basic needs were met, and she clearly resented me for being the reason her childhood was compromised for 10 years. I can't entirely blame her for this. She had to step into a role that took away her own childhood. Now, at 20, she seems to have adopted many of our mother's traits. She appears unempathetic to most people, self-centered, and increasingly involved in the cult-like environment we were raised in. Despite both of us being mistreated, it's evident to others that I was treated much more poorly. Several extended family members have noticed and asked me about it. In response to your question, I believe her life is currently facing difficulties. She's intellectually capable, but often undermines herself with her excessively high standards. I worry that her attitude and standards might lead her to end up alone. She has expressed views such as, "I don't care what anyone else says. I'm going to discipline my kids harshly," and holds very conservative beliefs. Anyone who would stay in a relationship with her might either be problematic themselves or lack self-respect. However, people can change, so perhaps there is hope for her. Comment 55. I was the GC until I hit puberty. As the youngest, my father often pitted me against my siblings. He was overt about it, frequently telling everyone I was prettier, smarter, and better because I resembled him the most. Everything my father claimed to love about me was really just about himself. I didn't have my own identity during the most formative years of my life and had to work hard as an adult to discover who I truly am. Growing up, my identity was an extension of my father's ego. I was a tool he used to feel better about himself and to provoke anger and frustration in my siblings. He used me to control and mistreat them, which is one of the most painful aspects of my experience. He would make me fetch the belt, order everyone to be quiet at his whim, and perform tricks for his amusement. He encouraged me to mock my brother, who was the primary scapegoat. This dynamic severely impacted my relationships with my older siblings, although my eldest brother, who left the house when I was very young, wasn't as affected. I wasn't given what I needed or wanted. Instead, I was given things that served my father's purposes or that would make my siblings envious. Any deviation from his expectations resulted in insults and a loss of autonomy. My mother, in an attempt to balance things, favored my brother and made me the household maid. She was emotionally neglectful, and by the age of 12, I was deeply depressed and had suicidal thoughts. It was around this time that I recognized the extent of my father's abusive behavior. I began resisting his demands, defending my siblings and mother from his tirades, and calling out his behavior. He responded by accusing me of being ungrateful and a source of his failure. and he would take me on car rides to share disturbing thoughts about abandoning us and cheating on my mother. He would insult me if I dressed nicely or wanted to socialize with friends. I felt trapped at home with limited freedom and struggled with depression well into my early 20s. Today, I am in a much better place. I'm happy, successful, and married to a wonderful man who understands my upbringing and my father's issues. I earned a bachelor's degree in psychology, which helped me understand myself and my family dynamics. I made it my mission to connect with my siblings and educate them about narcissism and its effects on us. We've shared our experiences and supported each other through therapy, with the exception of my oldest brother, who isolates himself and struggles with clinical depression. My sister, other brother, and I are now a united front. In recent years, my relationship with my mother has improved as I confronted her about her enabling behavior and our childhood abuse. We even have evidence, as my father used to torture my brother and took photos of it. She has made sincere efforts to make amends and has apologized to her children. My father resents that my siblings and I are happy, successful, and united, and that he no longer has control over us. He dislikes that my mother is now connecting with us while we mostly ignore him. Comment 56. It's like you described my GC brother, whom my mother affectionately calls my firstborn. He doesn't abuse substances, but he struggles with honesty and has issues with cheating, stealing, and a shopping addiction. He has never been able to hold a job for more than a few months and has taken a significant amount of money from my parents, who unfortunately kept giving him money, hoping he would pay them back. He has relied on them for years. Now in his early 50s, he is far from being a functioning adult. This isn't surprising when I consider that he faced no real consequences for his actions, and my parents were always there to rescue him. He repeatedly lied, cheated, and stole from his siblings, and my mother consistently overlooked his behavior. Psychologically speaking, he's been given everything, and now that the real world isn't accommodating his demands, he has become depressed. He never developed a work ethic, and therefore never believed he needed to work hard for his success. As a result, he now refuses to make any effort. The love he received was superficial and never aimed at helping him become a functional, emotionally empowered individual. There might have also been an inappropriate relationship with him, which could have contributed to his issues with self-worth. This is not an excuse for his behavior, but it provides insight into why he is the way he is. Comment 58. OMG, yes! Well, we sort of diverged because he is 11.5 years older and spent his early childhood as the scapegoat. He didn't realize that you could request a different job assignment in the military if yours had little to no use outside of it, which was his first mistake. He was doing well until he inexplicably punched a drill instructor, which led to him being demoted several ranks. He was so focused on becoming the father he never had that he didn't approach it responsibly. His first mistake was raising a child that wasn't his own and having another one with someone immediately after leaving the military, all before getting licensed in trades like HVAC, plumbing, or electrical work. The next woman he had a child with was a drug addict he met at a bar. Despite not finding his condoms and knowing she wasn't on birth control, they had a child together, which ended as one might predict. He also failed to grasp basic high school lessons about genetics, leading to him having yet another child with a woman, despite already having several daughters. He's now working overtime in warehouses and relying on family for financial support. If he eventually has a son with his several older daughters, he might struggle with traditional masculinity. As for me, I'm a career chef with a well-rounded resume, including experience at some of the top restaurants in the city and strong community support. I definitely would have thought more about my career choices if I hadn't been the scapegoat. Nevertheless, I've managed to do well for myself. Comment 59. Golden children face their own problems. I'm not envious of their lives because at least I've achieved independence and can manage just fine. Golden children often remain dependent because the love and affection they receive usually come with strings attached. My sister is doing all right, somewhat spoiled, but otherwise okay. She only realized she was the golden child when I went no contact for 2 years, and the narcissistic parent turned on her. She called me to complain about being mistreated, and I responded with, "Welcome to the club." Golden children are also abused, though in a different way. My GC sister has lost her individuality. Psychologically, she is no longer her own person, but a shell who lives solely for our parents' approval. Everything she does and every decision she makes mirrors our father's, and most of the time, our mother's preferences. As a result, she has no friends and is isolated, constantly monitored, and not allowed any time alone. She has a severe, untreated speech impediment and derives her sense of worth from being superior to others, which puts her on a path toward narcissism herself. Her appearance has deteriorated because our mother has significantly impacted her self-care and fashion choices. Currently, she is attending university to fulfill our mother's dream of opening a cafe together, and her other job is related to our father's profession. While she is the golden child, the cost has been high, and she is not aware that she has become their servant. Comment 61. My sister was the golden child, and I was always compared unfavorably to her because she was seen as the good one. In reality, she was a spoiled individual who treated everyone around her, especially me, poorly. People thought I would end up in prison or on the streets while she would succeed. However, at 17, she ran away to follow a guy, became homeless for a while, and developed an addiction to pot and meth. Now, she lives in poor conditions and has returned only to lash out at everyone for her own failures, even stealing my stories of abuse to portray herself as the victim. I feel pity for her, even though I know I shouldn't given the way she treated me. It's just sad to see her struggling like this. Comment 62. My brother isn't doing well. He's 26, still living at home, and only started paying rent a few months ago. He doesn't have a solid understanding of hard work or financial responsibility. He graduated high school with minimal effort, has been in 3 to 4 car accidents, and has been charged with 2 DWIs and 1 DUI. Despite this, our grandparents still gifted him a car. He currently lives at home and is working a job because our parents realize they need money for retirement and are now forcing him to contribute. Meanwhile, I'll be 20 years old in August and am living a nomadic lifestyle on the road. I managed to move out a year after high school because I had been working since I was 12. Our uncle bought a van for his company, but later realized it couldn't be equipped with a plow for the roads. Instead of selling it back to the dealership, he sold it to me at half price as a birthday gift while I was a junior in high school. He knew I disliked taking the bus to work after school, so this was a great help. I worked for him as a horticulturist for a year after graduating before hitting the road. Comment 63. My golden child brother is stuck in a situation where he's deeply involved in a strict religious group, Jehovah's Witness, working in a dead-end career, perpetually single, possibly still a virgin, and has achieved little at the age of 41. Despite his academic achievements, he was never able to leverage them effectively due to the extensive over-involvement of our parents in his life. My brother doesn't use drugs, but he does have strong beliefs in homeopathic treatments for various ailments, whether they are real or imagined. This is where much of his money goes. I'm waiting to see if he changes his approach to life once our dad finally decides to cut him off financially, and whether that will motivate him to get a job. Comment 64. It's the whole nature versus nurture debate, isn't it? Some people, regardless of their background, are more likely to turn out a certain way. Certain factors can influence outcomes, but ultimately, we all have choices or predetermined traits. You just never know. I know someone who, based on his background, might have seemed destined to follow a path similar to the rest of his family, who are often viewed as failures. However, he is exceptionally intelligent and has made positive choices along the way, leading to a life vastly different from that of his siblings. There are things we can't control and things we can. Comment 65. Yep, my GC sister had 2 kids by 2 different men in her early 20s and essentially left them for my parents to raise while she went out constantly. She got engaged, then canceled the wedding. She got engaged a second time, married, and divorced within a year. She started a business, stole from family, and had to close the business down under a mountain of debt. She then got involved with someone who struggled with substance abuse, and now, nearly 40, she's pregnant with his child, and he has left. She's now facing a future of poverty while raising her third child. Comment 66. I was the golden child until I wasn't. I received a lot of attention and expectations, which came with its own set of challenges. My siblings faced neglect because they weren't seen as special as I was by our parents. I was expected to meet their wants and wishes. When I was 15, I struggled with the combined impact of challenges at home and bullying at school. I developed an eating disorder and left school for a while. At that point, I felt like I wasn't valued by my parents, who pushed me to return to education. Now, they are going out of their way to support me, but I'm unsure if it's out of genuine care or concern that I might not achieve my goals. Every day, I feel I fall short of my own high standards and struggle with negative thoughts about myself. I often feel responsible for the difficulties in my life. My siblings reflect some of the behaviors we experienced growing up. They're young, so I understand that. I'm tired of being seen as the family disappointment and of watching my parents try to support them in ways they never did for me. I encourage them to get help and to recognize the impact of their actions. They only changed because they knew I would intervene, and societal understanding of family dynamics has evolved. In a way, I'm relieved not to be the golden child anymore. My siblings shouldn't have to be compared to me, which was a constant issue growing up until I couldn't meet those expectations. The support I've received in environments like college has been a pleasant surprise. Comment 67. My older sister is the golden child. She mirrors my mother's behavior, but is now more successful than my mom. My parents relied on her to make decisions for me regarding academics and extracurricular activities, but it didn't help as she lacked the necessary knowledge and didn't prioritize my best interests. Although she's only a year older than me, she wasn't an impartial figure, and her need to always be on top affected her judgment. My parents thought she was exceptionally smart, but they didn't consider seeking guidance from teachers or counselors to support me. At school, she often got into conflicts and was envious of others, particularly those who were successful or dating her exes. She had negative opinions about many people, using derogatory terms to describe them. She also embarrassed me publicly on Facebook because I didn't want to be her friend there, even though we weren't close in real life. Despite her outwardly successful life, an MBA, a nice house, a beautiful destination wedding, she and her second husband argue frequently. My younger sister was surprised by their engagement, expecting them to break up and the conflicts continue. My sister wants a child, and I worry about the potential challenges this might bring. I went no contact with my older sister 2 years ago due to the trauma she caused me. Now, my younger sister seems to be her new target, and she has even belittled her in front of friends. My sister's behavior continues to be hurtful and abusive. Comment 68. I was the golden child until I realized around age 25 that my 12-year younger sister had become the scapegoat. I was frustrated with both them and myself for not seeing it sooner. Now, I'm the low-contact scapegoat, and she's the golden child. The main difference is that she manipulates my parents, whereas I only tried to keep them happy. As the golden child, I never expressed my needs and went along with whatever was expected. I was often told, if your sister had come first, we never would have had a second child, which made me feel like I was doing the right things. I never asked for money, never went on vacations, and made all my hobbies align with my dad's interests. My sister, now 17, became the golden child around ages 13 to 14 and was given a $218 Audi at 16 and a Tesla at 17. She even threatened to run away when my dad asked her to get a job. In contrast, I was told, you need to work for nice things. They aren't given to you. So I rode a bike to work. My grandpa, who is the only person I talk to and understands how I'm treated, gave me my graduation present early so I could buy a car while in high school. My life has turned out well. I'm still in a go-with-the-flow lifestyle, with my wife having a strong personality, but it's comfortable since it's all I've known. I struggle to accept gifts, feeling unworthy, and my in-laws laughed when I stressed about Christmas because I wanted $80 storage chests for my power tools. My wife and I spent over $200 on each of her parents, but spending $80 on me made me emotional. Overall, growing up as the golden child involved receiving praise for mediocrity. I was a smart kid told I was smart too early, which led to laziness. While I didn't reach my full financial potential, I succeeded in family life. My wife and son love me dearly. My in-laws treat me as their own, and I have a small, close-knit group of friends. I do wish I had grown up as the scapegoat instead of the golden child. Being the golden child doesn't prepare you for a world where mommy and daddy can no longer protect you. Comment 69. My twin brother was the golden child. My father didn't see women as equals, which made me feel lesser by default. Despite this, my brother and I were still very close. He faced immense pressure to achieve perfect grades, be publicly recognized as a genius, and avoid any dumb mistakes. He maintained this image until he was 17. After our mom passed away, he struggled with severe depression and attempted to take his own life. Since then, he has made decisions from a place of deep sadness, without much support or help. My father barely acknowledged him after that, and was quick to send him across the country, seemingly eager to have his disappointment out of sight. My brother has been in several difficult relationships, lives in a remote town, and works at a physically demanding job. He smokes a pack of cigarettes a day and looks significantly older than I do. I still care about him deeply, but he's developed some challenging traits that make it difficult for me to maintain a close relationship. I am fully no contact with my entire family of origin, so I don't know for sure. However, my brother-in-law has left his Instagram public, allowing me to catch occasional glimpses of her life, kind of like Bruno from Encanto. She doesn't seem happy. She wanted children, but can't have any, which was something she really hoped for. According to her former best friend, who is now friends with me and not with her, she is difficult to be around because she tries to control every little thing. This makes sense, as I remember how competitive my sister was during board games, which made me unable to enjoy them anymore. From my distant perspective, it looks like she is filling her life with busy work by being excessively involved in her church, just like our mom did, ironically. Comment 71. No, she has a wealthy husband who is the same age as my parents. They live in a luxury penthouse, have no children, thankfully, as she is also a narcissist, and travel extensively. When her husband passes away, he will leave everything to her, and she can then be with one of her younger partners. I'm not sure how she's really doing since we stopped talking in 2020. That year, she became a staunch COVID denier, and I nearly lost one of my best friends and my business. Comment 70. My family had 2 golden children. Our mom was also very unstable, paranoid schizophrenia, and other issues. First, our oldest sister was love-bombed and forced to care for the 4 younger siblings. She managed to escape to college and never looked back. Then, when my brother showed significant athletic promise, he became the primary golden child for both my mother and father. My father stopped paying for my college to fund his instead. After he graduated, he's very intelligent. He's never held a job that required a college degree. He's never held a job for a full year, or even 6 months. He is a deeply troubled individual, narcissistic and diagnosed with mental illness. He refuses to stay on medication for more than a few weeks and will use any drug or drink any form of alcohol. Our family has repeatedly tried to get him into rehab, each of us several times. We have all been used and assaulted by him. He has spent about 80% of his life on the streets and has been through at least 50 rehab programs. He's been arrested hundreds of times across multiple states, to the point where police will drive him across state lines just to get him out of their jurisdiction. And I just love it when someone says, "But he's family." As if each of us siblings haven't spent thousands of our own money and years of our lives trying to help someone who does not want help. He just wants to manipulate and exploit us. He thrives on the power he has over us. If you understand this, then you've lived with a narcissist. Comment 73. Yes and no. He was very successful, landing a great job making over $300K at 20. He had credit cards, good credit, bought nice vehicles, and even got his ex-partner a brand new car, despite their breakup. He was paying $5 a month in child support, which he willingly did, and truly had a good life for about 8 years. Then he got fired for drinking on the job. He lost all his vehicles to repossession, went through bankruptcy, and had to sell his house. His mother had to pay his mortgage for him, and eventually, he sold the house. But here's the best part. He made around $50K in equity from the house sale, and instead of saving the money, he bought a Jeep. Cash. A few months later, his ex-partner took him to court, and his mother had to take out a loan to cover his lawyer fees. He knew his ex would take him to court because she had done so in the past, but he just had to have his Jeep. Looking back, I feel so much anger because when I struggled, she wouldn't even give me $30 for my electric bill. My golden child, younger sister, is married to a man who can't stand her but feels trapped by their 4 kids. They both abuse each other. She dropped out of high school at 15 with my narcissistic mother's approval and has never worked more than 3 weeks at a time. At 35, she still doesn't have a GED. Her children don't want to be around her, and they're all struggling in school due to her and her husband's lack of effective parenting. She was a drug addict and has been on Suboxone for the past 8 years. I finally cut her off for good at the end of last year. I couldn't handle her alternating between being nice and then turning on me out of nowhere. A pattern fueled by our mother pitting us against each other. Comment 75. My brother is also an alcoholic, married to a woman I suspect may be with him only for a visa. He has 3 kids and works 50 hours a week to support his family while living in a tiny apartment. This is quite different from our upbringing. He was the star basketball and football player and an honor roll student.